Today I'm sharing my 20 favourite horror films from the last 10 years. A lot of these will function as a natural cure for constipation. Welcome to By Candlelight, beaming folk horror, the supernatural and body horror straight into your brain via the Dan projector. In case of malfunction, just give me a little tap. So, I've not done a film episode for a little while, but just this last weekend I went to see the play Ghost Stories at my local theatre. It's the second time I've seen it and it still scared me. What they can do with sound, set changes, lighting and stagecraft is absolutely staggering. If you ever get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. Well, that got me to thinking about the film version and how great it is, which then led me on to think about my favourite horror films from the last 10 years. I'm not a jump scare for jump scare's sake kind of guy. I like things with multiple layers, twists, or with a strong social message. In fact, some of the films on this list don't actually scare me in the hide behind the pillow sense, but they bring something different, or the horror sits with you long after you've watched it, that sort of thing. Obviously, this is my opinion. I've not seen all films, so if you've got any to add, please do leave them in the comments. I know there's still a few that I haven't seen yet. So just off the top of my head, I still haven't seen a film called Bring Her Back. When I was compiling this list, it was a little frustrating not to be able to feature titles such as Lake Mungo, It Follows, just because they were made just slightly out of this 10-year period. I might actually do a 2005 to 2015 ranking just to capture those older films. Maybe even open this up into a series. Let me know what you think. Just generally, I think that horror films are very difficult to make and construct. It may be going well in the main body of the film, but then the ending just lets it all down. Do you show the evil early, or do you hold back as long as possible to take full advantage of the viewer's imagination to effectively scare themselves? And do you even show the evil at all? To get everything right must be so difficult. So for me, all of these films I'm going to talk about, they just get it right. Oh, and there will be no spoilers here. So if you've not seen any of these films, you can watch in safety. Might be a few teasers though. So let's get going, shall we? Have you checked behind you? I'd close those curtains if I were you. You don't want a face staring at you. At 20, Sinners. I was really excited for this one. I'd heard loads about it, that it was one of the best horror films of 2025 so far. Is it a great film? In many ways, yeah. It looks amazing, the music element is vibrant, and there is definitely a homage, an acknowledgement of black music and its impact on wider culture. The performances are excellent too. It's an excellent film that spends a lot of time disguised as a period crime drama. Is it a great horror film? Not so much. I would go further and say that it didn't actually need the horror element at all, and I think that the horror elements in it are a little bit stock, which is why I've featured it last on my ranking. It's kind of like From Dusk Till Dawn, if you need a reference, but steer away from the horror, and its other themes and references are spot on, making this essential viewing. It hits kind of like a Jordan Peele film, I would say. Look out for the musical montage section, which is just genius. Excellent film or not, it can't compete with the other titles on this list for me. At 19, Ready or Not. If you're after a good horror romp with some gore and laughs, this is the one for you. Add in the fact that it's set in this gorgeous stately home and you have a rewatchable film on your hands. This film doesn't have loads of layering or any hidden messages. It's just great fun. In fact, if you enjoy this one, check out Happy Death Day, which nearly made this list, but I didn't want black comedy to rule this list too much. 18, The Invisible Man. Okay, so this is the 2020 version. I nearly didn't include it, only because it can feel a little bit sci-fi thriller rather than horror. Then I remembered Elizabeth Moss's excellent performance in this. She spends most of this film utterly traumatized, and you'd have to watch the film to know what I'm talking about. So it's her internalization of this horror that makes this film worthy of this list. For me, this film shone a light on how abusive relationships can stay with a person long after the abuser is out of the equation. The fear of retribution or of the abuser reappearing in your life must be a very real anxiety, and Elizabeth conveys this so well. At 17, Abigail. This made my best horror film of 2024. It very much sits in the same space as Ready or Not, so a horror with light-hearted elements that still contains some bite. Literally, with a remarkable performance by Alicia Weir, who must have been about 13 at the time. This one will make you holler gleefully. Some of the set pieces are choreographed beautifully, and I mean that literally, because Abigail is a ballet dancer. When I named this as my horror film of 2024, I did say that I would change an element of it if it was me. As talking about that now would mean spoiler city, feel free to go and check out that little vid up there for more details, but only if you haven't seen it or you just aren't bothered. A great film, and definitely one of those where you're thinking, is that a 13-year-old in that part? 16, The Visit. I think everyone has experienced the good and the not so good M. Night Shyamalan films. When he gets it right, he's a visionary. In fact, in some of his great films, there are these themes of destiny and of everything happening for a reason. It's almost spiritual, and when you get these mini realizations from the character's perspective, it can give you goosebumps. There are these realization moments in The Visit, but of a very different kind. In terms of the filmmaker's output, I have been wounded by Lady in the Water and The Happening, and The Last Airbender and After Earth received quite poor reviews, so my expectations of The Visit were quite low. I have to be really careful here because I could spoil this one so easily. So let me just say that if you've avoided this one because you've lost a little bit of faith in M. Night, give it a go. 15, Hellbender. With a must-own rock soundtrack, this film was more or less made by one family, the Addams family. Not that one. They wrote it, directed it, starred in it, handled the cinematography, edited it, and then even wrote the music for it. I mean, what the hell, Bender? Don't let the singular vision put you off though. This is a witchy mother and daughter tale. Shot in their actual family home during the COVID lockdowns, it does make you think whether this film would have still have been made if it wasn't for the pandemic. It takes full advantage of their isolated home and the fact that they obviously couldn't accept anyone to help with the film, so they just have to do it all themselves. If you like things witchy, check this one out, and do check out the soundtrack as well. 14, Speak No Evil. This is the 2024 remake of the 2022 original Danish version. Yeah, I know. I'm not usually a fan of remakes either, particularly if they're transforming a film from another language into English. There's usually a cultural or even a climatic reason for the original being set in that particular country. It also feels a bit disrespectful, like the film has to be in English for it to reach a wider audience. But I have to be honest here, I did love most of the original, but the last 15, maybe 20 minutes made me very angry, and not within the realms of suspension of disbelief. No, it just made me angry and I nearly turned the film off. If you've seen the original, you may know what I'm talking about. Thankfully, this remake changes that ending but keeps the bulk of what was excellent about the original. So, this film is about compliance and of how much we as a civilized society can take before we hold up our hands and say, that's enough, you've crossed the line. So we switched the Danish and the Dutch cast of the original for an American and British one. Personally, I would have just have set both families as being British. I don't want to generalise, but us Brits are known for our over-politeness, so I think it just would have worked as a purely British cast. This film is also of particular interest because sections of it were filmed in my hometown of Malvern. If you've seen the original or you've seen both versions, let me know which one you prefer in the comments and why. Obviously, if you haven't seen any of them, maybe avoid the comments for a bit. 13, A Quiet Place. This nearly didn't make the list because I perceived it more as action than horror at first. But after rewatching it, it's freaking terrifying. Having to remain dead quiet. I mean, what the hell? But what a simple and brilliant plot device. Because you can't rely on the natural world or even the people around you to maintain dead silence. So this tension exists all the time, which is just nerve-shattering. And it's a great example of a horror film putting limitations on everyday life in order to create set pieces of peril whilst not providing an obvious route to salvation for the characters. As a script, this must have been so easy to learn. Do check out the sequel too. I thought Day 1 was okay, but not at the same level as the first two. 12, Ghost Stories. And back to where the idea for this episode began. This film, having started life as a play, is so much more than a collection of a few ghost stories. Of course, each story, or case as they are referred to, is scary in itself, but there are deeper things going on here. The film maintains a sense of dread that make the jump scares even more jumpy. Many films that feature a collection of stories within them tend to be knitted together quite loosely with a very weak plot. This one is the complete opposite of that. In fact, it encourages repeated viewings due to the various clues that are left throughout the film. Also, it's great that Andy Nyman plays the same character in this film as he did in the original London West End run of the play. Check both out if you can. 11. The Substance. Sometimes you just have to watch a film without knowing anything about it. And that's exactly what I did with this modern body horror classic. Nothing can prepare you for where this film goes. Also, I wouldn't have anything to eat whilst watching it unless you want a visual of your recently consumed food once more. But body horror aside, there are layers here. At its heart, this is about how Hollywood perceives women in the film industry. It's a commentary on how youth still seems to win those starring roles and how the old guard are pushed into more secondary parts. I would say that it also shines a light on plastic surgery and its potentially catastrophic outcomes, all in the name of trying to stay young, to stay relevant. So again, the finger is still pointed at Hollywood for perpetuating this obsession with youth. It's such a clever film, hidden behind a mask of grotesque body horror. 10, Smile 2. I didn't mind Smile 1. I thought it did set up a very effective visual horror element, but that it did muddle things up in the final third of the film. So when I wasn't that impressed by the trailer for Smile 2, I thought that that was it for me, that I wasn't going to go back to any other films in this franchise. But I'm so glad that I took the risk with this one. For me, this improves on Smile 1 tenfold. And it does this by focusing on one central character. That character is a recording artist with an image to maintain and an upcoming tour. By making the main character one that is very much in the limelight, this is almost like a constant battle between demons and trying to maintain a public persona and image. Add into that the stresses of trying to deal with an upcoming tour, and you've got a ticking bomb right there. I do hope this isn't the last film in the series, but if it is, what a way to end it. 9. The Ritual. This folk horror film makes full use of its Swedish forest setting to show its beauty in the day and its sinister atmosphere at night. Also, if there's ever an option to either follow the path or take the shortcut through the forest, always follow the path. Our protagonists choose the shortcut, obviously. Cue lots of creepiness and noises. It really highlights that feeling of being in a forest at night and not being able to see clearly all around you. While some folk horror films can lose their way in the final third due to having to consolidate ancient belief systems or traditions, this film does not disappoint. It keeps its feet firmly on the ground, and those feet are running. 8. Saint Maud, featuring the wonderful Morvid Clark in a remarkable performance. This is all about a Catholic nurse with a troubled past, combining deteriorating mental health with extreme religious beliefs. It's hard to know which mental state came first, but it matters not as you witness Maud slide into more delusional fantasy. And whilst this film cleverly sidesteps any demonising of a particular religious belief, it can show what impact it can have on an unhealthy mind. With a final scene that will burn itself into your brain, this is an unforgettable film. 7. Mandy. Anyone who loves their revenge horror backed by a metal soundtrack and a plethora of colourful camera lenses will love this one. And with Nicolas Cage currently focusing his attention on the more avant-garde and indie films, it does feel like he's refound his niche. And that niche is badassness. His character, Red, very quickly finds that he has a singular objective, and it's utterly thrilling to watch. To say that Nick Cage commits to this role is an understatement. Add into that this psychedelic surrealism, occult, and many weapons, and you have a very original film. Despite being a box office flop, it has gained cult status, if you excuse the pun. 6. The Witch. This slow-burning folk horror classic was our introduction to Robert Eggers. Combining the foreboding elements of a nearby forest with isolation and religious hysteria, this film is short on jump scares but rich in atmospheric dread that will sink into your bones. Introducing the disappearance of a young child in an instant right from under the nose of one of the characters clearly displays to the audience that there are supernatural elements at play here. The fact that it was shot just using natural light and candles makes this film even more earthy and atmospheric and brings you even closer to the ghastly plot. No wonder this film appears high on many folk horror rankings. 5. Talk to Me. A severed hand that apparently invites possession is the latest craze amongst young people at parties. But what happens when you don't obey the rules? We soon find out in this creepy modern classic that features some wonderfully ghastly set pieces. And the group situations where the hand is brought out for people to try means that bravado overtakes any feelings of fear or doubt on the part of the characters. We've all been there, being egged on to try something in public that we would never do if we were on our own. So yeah, you just know that bad things are gonna happen, you just don't know how or what. And the final few moments a genius, and it just stays with you long after the film has ended. 4. Midsummer. And we trundle back to folk horror and an amazing star turn from Florence Pugh. If films like The Wicker Man display a collective strangeness from the outset, it's all sweetness and light when a group of friends arrive in a commune in rural Sweden. Of course, this gives the film somewhere to go, to slowly drip these strange practices that are accepted as everyday life here. The landscape of this film is just stunning, and this is typical of folk horror. The beautiful and seemingly peaceful depictions of nature sitting incongruously against a backdrop of vile pagan practices. Even in the final climatic scene, we have beauty and hideousness combined, which only serves to further highlight the horror. Try and avoid the director's cut of this though, it just does not work. There's a reason why a lot of those scenes were cut. 3. Get Out. Just get out. Just a little joke there. When Chris, a black photographer, meets his white girlfriend's family, things don't feel right. Yep, Jordan Peele knew exactly what he was doing with Get Out. Combining themes of casual racism with objectification, he not only got his point across without lecture, he crafted one of the most original horror films of recent times. And it's through this use of horror that the film manages to amplify these themes, using alarming imagery, not to mention the plot itself. Drawing on the Stepford Wives for inspiration, but rooting this in inequalities that are sadly still with us, this film will stay relevant for many years to come. 2. Hereditary. Just before Midsummer, Ari Aster made his directorial debut with Hereditary. It centres on a family who are grieving the death of a matriarch, but that death begins to reveal some family secrets. If the vocal clicks or ticks displayed by the daughter don't unsettle you, then a nasty accident will. This supernatural horror contains relentless set pieces, all held together by Toni Collette's extraordinary performance. It's like every moment of creepiness has been considered and honed to make a truly terrifying film. And at 1, I have Host. Not to be confused with The Host, this has been my number 1 horror film for years. Written during the COVID lockdowns, referencing the lockdowns, and then released during the lockdowns. This is a masterstroke of budget filmmaking. Set entirely on a Zoom call, this film takes full advantage of the constraints we were all under at the time. We weren't allowed to meet up with each other, and we definitely had to isolate. Adding to that, an arrangement made by one of the characters in the film for a medium to join their call one night, and straight away you've reconstructed all of those party games and quizzes that we all used to play during lockdown on a Zoom call. Not only that, but the film runs at 58 minutes, which is the time allowed for a free Zoom call for a group of people. This short runtime not only makes this a straight to the point horror, but it also sidesteps the need to start wrapping things up at the end. Because in the film, the call just ends. It just ends. Apparently, production for the film involved each actor receiving their own box of special effects, a kind of a DIY approach that just serves to make this film even more unique. Nothing as yet has shunted Host from being my number 1 modern horror film. So there we have it, my juicy little darklings. You may have heard of or seen all of these, so I hope that at the very least this serves as a reminder to revisit these amazing films. Let me know your top horror films from the last 10 years, and let's pull together a list of some of the greatest modern horror movies. Until next time, See you later.